You're watching Stock Watcher this week. I'm your host, Zinati Kuma, and joining me for some stock-related analysis is Ricus Reeders from PSG Hole in One Ruimsig. Thank you so much for your time, Ricus. I've been away for the past 3 days. I feel like I know nothing. I feel like you should be talking the whole of this 30 minutes. but yeah, no, I have to talk because that's what I get paid to do. So let's actually start off because I came back and I saw that the US markets were clocking fresh record highs again. And of course, we know that it is the December period. Are we expecting just a sustained kind of rally and bull market during this month?
Yeah, there's two things there. The first one is something I spoke about a while ago, and that is that US markets historically have rallied after a presidential election. Doesn't matter who won, whether it be Democrat or Republican. So we're seeing that. Secondly, we are in a very favorable market environment where US companies can now start buying stocks back, which they are doing, and where there's also retail investors that, if you take a look at fund flows, are also now catching up, fear of missing out. And again, historically, December to January on average will return you about 4% on US markets. So it's winds in the sail at the moment. A lot of factors in the US markets favor, despite historically high valuations, specifically when you compare US companies' valuations to, for example, Europe.
All right. Well, Ricus, there have been quite a few interesting things that I've seen in today's trading. Let's actually start off with Absa because I see that it's surged about 5% today. Is there anything specific there? I mean, I do note also that whenever I ask investment professionals about the banking space, a lot of them will usually pick Absa, assuming that it's the one that has got the most upside. Of course, we know why they've also been an underperformer when it comes to their peers. Is there anything specific that you are seeing today, but also just your general views on Absa?
Okay, so you're quite correct. A lot of people have said it's undervalued, even considering its fundamental problems. But specifically, it came up with a trading update yesterday, which wasn't brilliant, but which for a change wasn't bad either.
Okay.
So, so one can now sort of start comparing them to the First Nationals and Standard Banks of the world. So it is, as the fundamental analysis suggested, undervalued, but it doesn't mean that it's now all of a sudden a great bang going forward. Indeed, if you take a look at their forward statement, that wasn't too positive at all. So what we're seeing is, I think, a bit of a reverting to the mean without an excellent operational performance. It was merely a acceptable performance.
So could it be a case of there are no expectations for things to get worse for Absa, but it may not necessarily get better and get onto par with the other banks, particularly the three outside of Capitec?
Yeah, I think that's sort of the case. In other words, so it really has gone from a disappointing performance over the past few reporting periods, as I said, to acceptable for Absa, but not necessarily in comparison with the other major banking groups. That being said, it's got a nice rally at the moment, and I think I had a look. There's probably about another 4 or 5% upside just on a technical graph basis in it. So if you've got Absa, you can smile for the moment.
All right. And just, with the other banks outside of Capitec, because obviously that is, I guess, a great space to be in the equity space. Any other banks that you would be interested in there, or is it just a case of all the banks actually just do look attractive?
Yeah, there's some company-specific issues, which, if I can briefly summarize, one of which affects both Absa and Standard Bank, which is the Africa operations, which operation is doing well, but because of weakening emerging market currencies, especially in Africa, that is distracted from performance for those two particular banks. And in First Rand's case, also very specific. They've got a well-publicized problem in the UK where their motor financing arm is under threat of some penalties that might be imposed on them by UK authorities. They've made provision for it, but in matters like these, obviously it adds a little bit to the risk. It adds to your discount rate. So that's holding back First Rand and Standard Bank specifically.
I mean, it's quite interesting that you talk about these company-specific issues, and I want to veer off to Investec. Would that be one worthy to be looked at this point? Maybe looking at the fact that it seems to be in quite a solid position. I mean, even today, I do see that it's had a rally of about 3%.
Yes, again, it had a trading update or a while ago, and the market didn't really like that. And,
I remember, yeah.
And we had a slight decline. It's picking up a little bit. Again, trading update. If I haven't actually gone through it, but obviously the market says, okay, not too bad. So if you like investing, again, just taking a look at the graph, this doesn't look like a bad place to pick up some, although if I were to go into what is essentially very much a UK operation with some South African stuff thrown in, I'm wondering whether one wouldn't really go offshore and take a look at offshore banking groups, whether it be America or possibly even some of the European banks
All right.
or financial institutions.
All right, all right. Ricus, let's go into logistics. I actually see that the Supergroup has actually decided to dispose of its interest in SG Fleet. And of course, they've withdrawn that cautionary announcement. There's been quite a lot of corporate action happening. Is this one that investors are cheering?
Yeah, I think so. And specifically, if you take a look at the Supergroup share price rally, they're going to get a lot of money for that offshore operation. It's been approved. There's going to be a special distribution to shareholders, which will make them very happy. And then what you're left with is basically Supergroup's African operation at a very low valuation, which would make them seemingly attractive. The problem is, I think that SG Fleet was the jewel in the Supergroup crown, and what you're left with is a bit of a tarnished crown because their local operations are in a difficult space, and for various reasons, but low growth, economic growth local growth is, as always with all these local companies, a big problem. So what you're going to be left with as far as Supergroup is concerned might be very attractive, probably on a very low 2 or 3 price earnings, which is very, very cheap. So there might be a bit of a re-rating, but as always, you can have a re-rating in an unattractive company, and that's wonderful, and you make a capital gain. But do you want to be in, as I said, in an operationally difficult company or environment for the long term? And as you know, we do focus on that. So there's possibly short-term price gains to be made in what remains of Supergroup. But again, it would be far more a revaluation play than an investment case.
Okay, all right. Well, let's go into gold, Ricus, because also Pan-African Resources, one of the companies that have posted some significant losses on the share price today, down about 4%. And actually, there have been quite a lot of questions coming through for Pan-African. I think at some point, a lot of people were interested in Pan-African Resources. I mean, just even operationally, we did see them doing quite well. But yeah, just talk to me about the losses that we are seeing today. Is it a case of a gold or just, that sector in general?
Well, first of all, it's a sector in general. Harmony's Goldfields, all of them down today. Admittedly, there might be, but I haven't seen any specific news release out of Pan Africa. And if there isn't specifically anything that's been released in the market that I don't know of, as a gold company, mining company, I think it's a great little operation. Mining, well, historically mining some very difficult reefs.
Yeah.
I'm quite interested in their new development on the East Rand as far as above ground waste is concerned. That's a nice little money spinner if the gold price goes in the correct direction. But not sure why gold is specifically down today. I don't think the dollar has strengthened a lot, which will always have an impact on the gold price. This morning, gold price was basically unchanged from yesterday. So why the weakness? Not sure.
I mean, gold at this point, I mean, you talk about the gold price being down slightly today, but would it still be kind of a safe space to be in at the moment? And particularly because we've also had a lot of political chaos going on.
Yeah. Well, for one thing, in more than 30 years, I've never actually seen a gold price move like this over the past few years.
Yeah.
As to whether it's a safe place, it's never a safe place because things can turn around very quickly and very negatively. That being said, momentum is on the side of the gold price. I don't forecast, and especially so with gold. But if you trust the momentum, just again looking at a graph, there's upside to what about 3,400 or something like that. So yeah, play the gold miners in the sense of trading. Make sure that you notice what you're holding, have stop losses in place, and as I said, momentum at the moment positive. So as not safe, but certainly holding if you're, I will almost say, a professional investor in gold and gold mining.
Right. There was a very interesting question that came in yesterday, and I'd actually like to pick your brain on it. It goes, as Telkom in takeover talks again. Is there anything that you've heard in the vines? But also, after MTN failed in its bid for Telkom, it has been quiet in terms of takeover talks with Telkom. Would it also be a case of the fact that Telkom looks better now, even on its own, that it may not need a savior?
Yeah, takeover talks possibly always there as far as their results were concerned. I thought that was pretty good. They have a dominant position in fiber. Their legacy business is having less and less of an effect. Management have done a great job of repositioning the company, and certainly over the past 2-3 days, we've seen a heck of a spike in the share price itself. So whether it's rumors in the background and you add to that a pretty good fundamental picture, but it's certainly had a massive break to the upside from what has really been a multi-year long decline in the share price. So it certainly looks very interesting, specifically in comparison with Vodacom and MTN, who have their own problems in the form of the African and overseas operations.
So at this point, would you say that even without anybody taking Telkom over, it would still be, I guess, good and maybe on a positive and upward trajectory even on its own?
Yeah, I mean, telecoms are difficult companies to generate value because of the enormous capital spend they've got to do the whole time, whether it's improving networks or digging trenches for their fiber or putting up towers. it's an expensive business, and margins can be pretty thin as well, and especially if you operate in other geographies, and then you've got the exchange rate for or against you as well. So it's not a sector that I would normally be interested in, except if there's a very specific case to be made. But certainly, if you're interested in the telecom sector, I think Telkom itself is not the black sheep that it used to be.
Okay. All right. Well, Ricus, let's get to your stock pick for today. What are you choosing?
It's a European construction company called Siemens. Share price is breaking to a new high, but the idea behind that is that we started off this program talking about the American sort of big cap companies valuations in comparison with the euro area counterparts being very expensive in relation to. So I think Siemens, although it is domiciled in Europe, at current valuation doesn't reflect the true earnings potential because it operates in the US, earns dollars in other countries as well, and the construction sector itself in Europe is probably one of the most undervalued sectors worldwide to start off with. So Siemens is part of an undervalued sector, and looking at the price momentum, it's breaking to new highs. So that tells me a good story. If we see a revaluation of construction companies in Europe, that will be an added benefit to what Siemens is already doing well.
All right. Well, thank you so much for your time and for your analysis today, Ricus. Much appreciated. That was Ricus Reeders from PSG Hole in One Ruimsig. And that's all we have time for this evening. We'll be back next week, Monday at 6:30. So be sure to keep sending your questions on email at stockwatch@bdtv.co.za or via SMS on 41392. For now, we bring you more business analysis right after the break. So stay watching.